Praise, esteem, and honor to the Most High Yah by way of Yah, Yeshua HaMashiach. We look at John 5:39. It says, "Search the scriptures, for in them you think you have eternal life, and they are they which testify of me. And you will not come to me that you might have life. I receive not honor from men, but I know you, that you have not the love of Elohim in you. I come in my Father's name, and if you receive me not, if another shall come in his own name, him you will receive. How can you believe which receive honor one of another, and seek not the honor that comes from Elohim only?" Let's swing over here to John chapter 3, verse 17. John 3 and 17. It says, For Elohim sent not his son into the world to condemn the world, but that the world through him might be saved. He that believe on him is not condemned, but he that believe not is condemned already, because he have not believed in the name of the only begotten Son of Elohim. Now, a lot of people have a problem with that statement. They feel like boom, boom, boom. And then, a lot of people feel like David is the coming Mashiach. That's how I feel. You know what I'm saying? So we need to look at that. And we need to look at the places of why they feel that way, and then ascertain it. We've done this before to a certain extent. Just go do it again because of the conversation with Captain the Idiot yesterday. So let's look at some of the places why they feel this way. Let's take a look at Hosea chapter 3. See, dude got mad because I told him he was weak in the text. And of course, because of the things that he was saying and the connections that he was trying to make. It was pure and utter garbage. It was tomfoolery. Trash at the highest level. Cuss up, but you know he did. I'm going to tell you something with a lot of dudes. Hold on. A lot of dudes feel like if you question them or call them to task or prove their points, that it's something wrong with you. And they get offended. Because a lot of dudes don't want to prove their points, because they can't prove their points, and because they're idiots. So, Hosea 3 and 1. Then said Yahuwah unto me, Go yet love a woman beloved of her friend, yet an adulteress, according to the love of Yahuwah towards the children of Yasharah, who look to other gods and love flagons of wine. So I bought her to me for 15 pieces of silver, and for a homer of barley, and a half homer of barley. And I said unto her, Thou shalt abide for me many days, thou shalt not play the harlot, and thou shalt not be for another man. So will I be for thee, so will I also be for thee. Now, grab you 2 Chronicles 15 real fast, so we can, before we even read this verse right here, which is the next verse coming. So I want you to grab 2 Chronicles 15. Well, hold on. Oh, there we go. Let me grab 2 Chronicles 15. I was trying to pull something up. So you know that Hosea or Oshay means salvation. That's what that name means. So while we grabbing this 2 Chronicles 15, I want you to go grab. Let's look at Numbers 13 real fast. Numbers 13. So just put your hand on 2 Chronicles 15, hold Hosea 3, and come over here to Numbers 13, and then we'll swing right back over here to after we read this Numbers 13, we go swing to Hebrews chapter 3, chapter 4. I want to say. Numbers 13. Number 16. Well, we look at chapter at verse 8. Numbers 13 and verse 8. And we're going to look at and see where Yahusha son of Nun, what tribe he come from. And of the tribe of Ephraim, Hoshea the son of Nun. And then we look at verse 16. These are the names of the men which Moses sent out to spy the land. And Moses called Hoshea the son of Nun Yahusha. So you see that he changed his name. His name went from being salvation to Yahuwah salvation. And he is the one who led them in the land, whose name means, I have produced fruit in my affliction or my suffering. This is also pointing us to something. It's telling us something about how to attain salvation. Like Acts 14 and 22 say, you must enter in through much tribulation or affliction or sufferings to be able to attain us. You know, a lot of people think if you believe in a Mashiach, that naturally makes you a weak or cowardly man, which that's not the case. All of the prophets, for the most part, were made perfect in their ministries by reasons of the things that they suffered, pointing to the sufferings of Mashiach and the sufferings that those who become one with him will have to partake. Let's look at Hebrews chapter 4. After we finish Hebrews chapter 4, we'll come back to 2 Chronicles 15. Hebrews chapter 4, we look at verse 7. He said, again he limit a certain day, saying in Dawood, today after so long time, as it is said, today if you will hear his voice, harden not your hearts. For if Yahusha had given them rest, he would not have afterwards spoken of another day. There remained therefore a rest to the people of Elohim. For he that entered his rest, he also have ceased from his own works, as Elohim did from his. Now we look at Yahusha son of Nun. The first thing people want to point to is this. Matter of fact, let me do it like this here. Deuteronomy 18 and 16. Now we see that Yahusha son of Nun is from the tribe of Ephraim, according to the law. So you need to always, you need to know that. You need to remember that. So by definition, he was not a priest. It says that when we read Deuteronomy 18, you should know what we're looking at. We're looking at what this person who is that prophet is supposed to be like. So this would automatically eliminate Yahusha son of Nun from filling this classification. And we're going to see, we're looking at this for a reason in Deuteronomy, in 2 Chronicles 15 and Hosea chapter 3, which we're going to return to. Deuteronomy 18 and 15, actually. Yahuwah thy Elohim will raise thee up unto thee a prophet from the midst of thy brethren, like unto me, and unto him shall ye hearken. So this prophet has to be exactly like Moses. David was not a deliverer. Do you know what I'm saying? Because he didn't deliver Yasharal from any captivity. He fought a lot of battles. Do you know what I'm saying? But while he ruled, he didn't deliver us from any captivities. He conquered land to be able to make the land all of ours. Truth be told, after he did that, the land had rest, because when Solomon began to rule, the land had rest, because David was fighting many, many battles. But at the time, you got to remember, David took over from Saul. Yasharal was not under any exile or captivity to anyone at the time that this man took over. That would automatically rule him out, because David don't fit that. He did not do that. Nevertheless, according to all that, and David was not a lawgiver, which we're going to look at, because remember, this man said that David was a priest, and he used some very banal and asinine arguments and justifications to try to prove that David was a priest. It said, according to all that thou desire of Yahuwah thy Elohim in Horeb in the day of the assembly, saying, let me not hear again the voice of Yahuwah my Elohim, neither let me see this great fire anymore, that I die not. So again, he say, it's this prophet that's like unto him has to be according to what the people desired. The people knew that Moses spoke to Yahuwah face to face. That again eliminates David. It said, according to all that thou desired of Yahuwah in Horeb. And Yahuwah said unto me, they have well spoken that which they have spoken. I will raise them up a prophet from among their brethren like unto thee, and will put my words in his mouth, and he shall speak unto them all that I shall command him. And it shall come to pass that whosoever will not hearken unto my words, when he shall speak in my name, I will require it of him. Now, where do we see anybody bidding anything required unto them for not listening to Yahushua son of Nun or David? We don't see that anywhere. Nowhere at any time. Now, let's return to 2 Chronicles chapter 15 and let's look at verse 1. After we read 2 Chronicles 15 and 1, we'll swing to 1 Samuel chapter 2. Probably about verse 30. And the Ruach of Elohim came upon Azariah the son of Oded. He went out to meet Asa and said unto him, Hear ye me, Asa, and all Yehuda and Benjamin. Yahuwah is with you while you be with him. And if you seek him, he will be found of you. But if you forsake him, he will forsake you. Now for a long season, Yasharah have been without the true Elohim, and without a teaching priest, and without Torah. So, if we look at what this is 2 Chronicles, the 15th chapter, right? David is dead. You know what I'm saying? Now, David hadn't even really been dead that long, because Asa has taken over. David ain't even been dead that long. This ain't too long after Solomon's rule has ended. So you mean to tell me this is the long time they've been without a teaching priest, if David was that teaching priest? Because he claims David is a priest after the order of Melchizedek, simply because of the song of Psalms 110. He say David was writing that about himself, even though David was not a priest. Moses was from the tribe of Levi, which means he could be a priest, since that's who the priesthood was given to. David mourned in sorrow because they couldn't bring up the Ark of the Covenant in the proper. Why David didn't bear the Ark of the Covenant? He was a priest. He would have been lawful to do so, yet he had enough sense not to do that. Interesting. 1 Samuel chapter 2. Actually, it's 1 Samuel 2, and to pick it up by verse 33. And the man of thine whom I shall not cut off from my altar shall be to consume thy eyes and to grieve thy heart, and all the increase of thine house shall die in the flower of their age. And this shall be a sign unto thee that shall come upon thy two sons, Hophni and Phinehas, and one day they shall die both of them. And I will raise me up a faithful priest, that shall do according to that which is in my heart and in my mind, and I will build him a sure house, and he shall walk before my anointed forever. Now this man said forever. Forever. And this priest would be after his heart and his mind, and to do what according which is his heart and in his mind, and he'll build him a sure house. Now, let's see. Now, I'm going to show y'all something where individual try to work that. Let's look at 1 Samuel 25, and we'll show you what niggas see. See, this is David, because he said he built him a sure house. But we know David's house wasn't sure, because there was turmoil and war in his house. He told David the sword would be in his house forever. After we read 1 Samuel 25, we swing to Hebrews chapter 3. I want 1 Samuel 25. Pick me up about verse 27. And let's see what it says. And now this blessing which thy handmaid hath brought unto my master, let it be given unto the young men that follow my master. I pray thee forgive the trespass of thy handmaid, for Yahuwah will certainly make my master a sure house, because my master fight the battles of Yahuwah, and evil have not been found in thee all thy days. Yet a man is risen to pursue thee and seek thy soul, but the soul of my master shall be bound in the bundle of life with Yahuwah thy Elohim, and the souls of thy enemies, them shall he sling out as out of the middle of a sling. And it shall come to pass, when Yahuwah have done to my master according to all the good that he hath spoken concerning thee, and shall have appointed thee ruler over Yasharal, that there shall be no grief unto thee, nor offense of heart unto my master, either that thou hast shed blood costless, or that my master have avenged himself. But when Yahuwah shall have dealt well with my master, then remember thy handmaid. So this is what they'll swing, because they say Abigail says that Yahuwah will make him a sure house. So therefore they'll say, see, he's that teaching priest right here. This is the logic. This is how they do this. You got to know how they do operate, how they move, because that's what they're going to do. Now let's go back to Hosea chapter 3. Because again, for him to be the person referred to in Samuel, he has to be a priest. David was no priest. Hosea 3, we in verse 4. Now it says, for the children of Yasharal shall abide many days without a king, and without a prince, and without a sacrifice, and without an image, and without an ephod, and without a teraphim. And afterwards the children of Yasharal return and seek Yahuwah their Elohim and David their king, and shall fear Yahuwah in his goodness in the latter days. So you see this right here. They say, see, we've been without a sacrifice, even though they had sacrifices long after David was dead, for a few thousand years. They'll say, see, it says David your king, therefore David is the king. Let's look at Psalms 132 and 14 and see if they can answer this question. I told you this once before, and it ain't just on this particular topic. You have to know your truth, because these people know they lie, and they'll sell it to you real good if you don't know the truth. Psalms 132 and 14. My apologies. Psalms 132, and I'll read verse 7. Matter of fact, let's look at verse 5. I know I mentioned Hebrew chapter 3, but hold on. I'm going to work something in a second. Psalm 132 and 5. He said, until I find out a place for Yahuwah, a habitation for the mighty Elohim of Yaakov. This man say till he finds out a place of habitation. This is a promise to David and Zion. He said, lo, we heard of it at Areptah. We found it in the fields of the wood. Now, if you look at Areptah, anybody know what city he referring to? Anybody know what city he referring to? Because we can't leave that unspoken. Anybody know what city he referring to? Go to Micah chapter 5 and verse 1. Micah 5 and 1. Yeah, hold this Psalms 132. Oh, excuse me. Micah 5 and 1. Let me get that on. Can't even find it in the doggone book, man. There we go. Micah 5 and 1. Now gather thyselves in troops, O daughters of troops, for he have laid siege against us, and they shall smite the judge of Yasharal with a rod upon the cheek. We already know that did not happen to David. But thou, Bethlehem Arapta, though thou be little among the thousands of Yehudah, yet out of thee shall come forth unto me that is to be ruler in Yasharal, whose goings forth have been from old and from everlasting. Therefore will he give them up until the time that she which travail have brought forth. Then the remnant of his brethren shall return until the children of Yasharal. And he shall stand and feed in the strength of Yahuwah, in the majesty of the name of Yahuwah's Elohim, and they shall abide, for now shall he be great unto the ends of the earth. So let's look at 1 Samuel 17 and 12. And after that, we swing around here to John chapter 12, if I'm not mistaken. If it ain't John 12, it's John 7. 1 Chronicles 17. It says that he that become a ruler got to come up out the house of bread. So when you see that a reptile mentioned, you know what is mentioned. Hello? Hello? Shalom. So let's look at this 1 Samuel 17 and 12. Man, if I was in 1 Samuel instead of 2 Samuel, we might have had some action. 1 Samuel 17 and 12. He said, now David was the son of that Areptite of Bethlehem Yehudah, whose name was Jesse, and he had 8 sons, and the man went among men for an old man in the days of Saul. So we just got to see that this is the city where David is from. This is the city where Jesse is from. It says this is where the ruler of Yasharal will come from. Now it also says that this ruler of Yasharal will stand and feed. That's what it said in Micah. It said he'll stand and feed in the strength of Yahuwah. So let's look at what he would be doing to feed. And then we'll read an instance where they'll say, see, this is David. Matter of fact, before we even read that one instance, let's look at Psalm 78. Because see, I'm gonna tell y'all this is what they do. The same thing. We hold in Psalms 132 and Hosea chapter 3. The same thing that they claim that we do. Anywhere they see anything with David, they will attribute it to David. And then run back and say, see, we doing the same thing. Just because it says David's name, you have to understand what's written. Because there's a lot of things we'll just say David. But if you already know what's stated, then you know he just made a promise to David. And his progeny, not David himself. Psalm 78, what we want right here? Psalm 78. Let's look at verse 60. Because remember, Psalms 132 would say he's seeking out a habitation. He said that he would make this man, this faithful priest in Samuel, a sure house. Then they'll come back and see what Abigail said David would be that sure house, that Yahuwah would make him a sure house. But you already know from 2 Samuel chapter 7 verse 12, he ends up coming to make this promise to Solomon, which for edification's sake, if we have to read it, we just go ahead and read it, to show who was going to build the house. David did not build that house, so that sure house would be somebody from his progeny that would build that, and not David himself. Psalm 78 and 60. So that he forsook the tabernacle of Shiloh, the tent which he placed among men, and delivered his strength into captivity and his esteem into the enemy's hand. So look at what he just saying here, because this is a testimony of Mashiach. This is a prophecy right here. We're going to sit back and look at it. David did not write this. He's not attributed to writing this psalm. He said he forsook the tabernacle of Shiloh and delivered his strength into captivity and his esteem into the enemy's hand. Does anybody have any idea what this could actually be telling us about? Well, hold on. When we look at Shiloh, you know that means place of rest. So we have to see how this would pertain to Mashiach. We already read in Hebrews 4 that if he would have given, Yahushua son of Nun would have given us rest, he wouldn't have spoke of another day. So let's eliminate 2 things that we got going on in this particular verse. We need to look at place of rest. We need to look at the tent which he placed among men. Then we need to look at how he delivered it into captivity and his esteem into the enemy's hand. Let's turn around and look at Matthew chapter 11 verse 28. Because this didn't happen to David. Never once was David delivered into the hand of his enemies. Yah delivered David out of the hand of all of his enemies. Saul never got him. Absalom never got him. None of his enemies ever got him. Nor did he ever forsake David at any time. Matthew 11 and 28. It says, come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn of me, for I am meek and lowly in heart, and you shall find rest unto your souls, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light. So therefore Hamashiach is that rest. He's that Shiloh. He said he forsook that tent. I will go and read it, but we got to speed up a little bit. In John chapter 2, he said he spoke of the tabernacle of his body. When he say destroy this temple and I'll build it up in 3 days. We know from Matthew 27, this man was on the stake and he say, my Elohim, why have you forsaken me? He forsook his tabernacle or his place of rest and delivered it into the hands of the enemy. He delivered him into the hands of the scribes and the Pharisees. They took him captive. We just talked about him getting taken captive last Shabbat. He got taken captive. They took him. He forsook that and they took him captive. Let's look at Hebrews chapter 3 though. 3 and 1. Hebrews 3 and 1. And let's sit back and look at how he made him a sure house. Because remember, Hamashiach is the sanctuary which Yahuwah pitched and not man, which would make him sure because he was not made with men's hands. See, most of these brothers out here, they're looking for something that is carnal, of which man constructed, because they truly don't want to give Yahuwah the esteem. They want the esteem for themselves. Wherefore, my Kadesh brethren, partakers of the heavenly calling, consider the apostle and high priest of our profession, Yahushua HaMashiach, who was faithful to him that appointed him, as also Moses was faithful in all his house. For this man was counted worthy of more esteem than Moses, inasmuch as he who have built the house have more honor than the house. For every house is builded by some man, but he that built all things is Elohim. And Moses truly was faithful in all his house as a servant, for a testimony of those things which were to be spoken after. But Mashiach a son over his own house, whose house we are, if we hold fast the confidence and the rejoicing of hope firm to the end. So let's come back to Psalm 78. We have verse 62. He said he gave his people over also unto the sword, and was wroth with its inheritance. The fire consumed their young men, and their maidens were not given to marriage. Their priests fell by the sword, and their widows made no lamentation. Then Yahuwah waked as one out of sleep, like a mighty man that shout by reason of wine, and he smote his enemies in the hinder parts, and he put them to a perpetual reproach. And that's kind of the stuff we have been talking about with Gog and Magog, that when he awake out of his slumber, or as Luke 18 say, he come to avenge us because we've been troubling him continually to avenge us of our enemies. And this is what this is. This perpetual reproach, or this continual everlasting dishonor, is the burning and the lake where the worm dies not and the fire shall not be quenched. This should give you some manner of comfort, like what Micah stated in the 7th chapter, that your enemies will become mire in the street. That if you're walking in obedience, you know that you will be avenged. Therefore, you don't have to sit back and look for it and talk about it daily and wish for it and pray for it, because the Master said, I will avenge you speedily, but nevertheless will the Son of Man find faith when he come upon the earth. You don't need to be worried or concerned about knowing that Yah will avenge you. Every ounce of blood that has been spilled, he will spill twice that. Every pain that's been rendered unto you, he will render it unto your adversaries, and render it unto them quickly. Some of them, they still catching it individually. You just can't see it. You have no idea what any of these people are going through or suffering for their iniquities. And some are not suffering anything until that last great day, and then they'll suffer plenty then. He said, moreover, he refused the tabernacle of Joseph, and chose not the tribe of Ephraim, but chose the tribe of Yehudah and Mount Zion, which he loved. And he built his sanctuary like high palaces, like the earth which he established forever. He chose David also his servant, and took him from the sheepfolds. From following ewes and great with young, he brought him to feed Jacob his people, and Yasharal his inheritance. So he fed them according to the integrity of his heart, and guided them by the skillfulness of his hands. So here it's saying, see, David fed the people, so this is how he's a priest. He was the one feeding the people. We know that Numbers 27 say, let the house of Yasharal be not sheep without a shepherd, but set a man over the congregation. So they say, see, this is him. David's feeding them. Just like it said in and to Psalms 132 we're looking at. But let's look and see who will feed the people. Let's turn around and look at John chapter 10. We still got to hit John 12. I'll get to it in a moment. But let me do the John 12 now, and then we'll do John 10. Almost let John 12 slide on out the way. Can't let that Bethlehem point slide out the way. Let's make sure John 12 is what we desire. It is John chapter 7. John chapter 7 is what we desire. John 7 and we'll do 37 just on general principle. Because he said that he would give Yasharal a faithful priest, and we had abided many days without a teaching priest. So there's no evidence of David teaching anyone, any book, anywhere at any time. You don't read that nowhere. We know Moses taught the people the law because you can read it. He gave it to them. We can read Mashiach teaching the people the law. You can read it. He walked around teaching these people continually. John 18 and 20, he told them plain up and down. He said, man, I ever taught in the synagogues and in the streets. Ask the people. They know what I taught. And the man slapped him for it. In the last day, that great day of the feast, Yahushua stood and cried, saying, If any man thirst, let him come unto me and drink. He that believe on me, as the scripture hath said, out of his belly shall flow rivers of living water. But this spake he of the Ruach, which they that believe on him should receive. For the Ruach HaKadosh was not yet given, because that Yahushua was not yet esteemed. Many of the people, therefore, when they heard this saying, said, Of a truth, this is the prophet. So they referred to him as the prophet that we read in Deuteronomy 18 earlier. Others said, This is the Mashiach. But some said, Shall the Mashiach come out of Galilee? Have not the scripture said that Mashiach come of the seed of Daud and out of the town of Bethlehem, where David was, which we read in Micah? And he said that he would stand and feed in the strength of Yahuwah. That's what it said that this Mashiach was going to do. This is what the people understood, that this was going to occur. Number one, it said that this same person was from old and from everlasting. They're going to have to prove that David is from ancient times and forever. But we just read in 2 Samuel 17 and 12, well, 1 Samuel, 17 and 12, that David just come from Jesse. So clearly he's not from old and everlasting. Nowhere in the book does it ever say that David is from old and everlasting. It also says that from that time that she travailed and have brought forth, then the remnant of the brethren would return. So then David has to be, it turns around and says she. It's going to have to bring forth. Clearly this can't be David. David can't produce any children. He doesn't have the ability to give birth. Then it says he'll stand and feed in the strength of Yahuwah and the majesty of the name of Yahuwah. We start every time with, I come in my Father's name. Mashiach came in this man's name, in his majesty, in his greatness, in his excellence. Because we know from John 12, he say, Father, esteem thy name. He say, I've esteemed it and I'll do it again. The master asked in John 17, give me the esteem which I had with you before the world was. So he was standing in the majesty, the honor, the greatness, the excellence of Yahuwah to do this. When it says that he will stand and feed in the strength of Yahuwah, it also calls him the strength in Psalms 132. You know from Genesis 49 that the firstborn is the excellency and strength of a man. David was not the firstborn. He was the youngest child. Nevertheless, John chapter 10. John 10, what we want, man? About verse 8 or 7. He said, Then said Yahushua unto them again, Truly, truly, I say unto you, I am the door of the sheep. All that ever came before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep did not hear them. I am the door. By me, if any man enter in, he shall be saved, and the same shall go in and out and find pasture. The thief come not but for to steal and to kill and to destroy. I am come that they might have life, and that they might have it more abundantly. I am the good shepherd, and the good shepherd give his life for the sheep. But he that is a hireling and not the shepherd, whose own the sheep are not, see the wolf come and leave the sheep and flee, for the wolf catch them and scatter the sheep. The hireling flee because he is a hireling and care not for the sheep. I am the good shepherd and know my sheep, and am known of mine. As the Father know me, even so I know the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep. Now, one of the things we sit back and look at is the shepherd is the one who leads the sheep and he feeds the flock. If you sit back and you think upon this, you know from John chapter 6 that he said that he would feed the people, in the flesh that he would feed them would be his body. Therefore, you could turn around and see how he was the one feeding the people. See, now I'm going to tell you something. This is coming to my mind right now. They would probably go to that instance where David gave everybody a good piece of flesh and a flagon of wine and all those other things to see he was feeding the people. That's probably what they would use to justify saying, see, this is David doing this. But we know when you're talking about a shepherd from Numbers 27 leading the people and feeding the people, that's feeding them with the word. David never did this. But let's look at someone who did. 1 Peter chapter 5. You know what's also funny to me that sometimes them dudes don't believe in Hamashiach, but yet love to quote certain things out the New Testament to justify some of their stances. I don't understand that realm of thinking. 1 Samuel chapter 5, 1 Peter chapter 5 and verse 1. The elders which are among you I exhort, whom also an elder, and a witness of the sufferings of Mashiach, and a partaker of the esteem that shall be revealed. Feed the flock of Elohim which is among you, taking the oversight thereof, not by constraint, but willingly, not by for filthy lucre, but of a ready mind, neither as being masters over Elohim's heritage, but being ensamples up to the flock. And when the chief shepherd shall appear, you shall receive a crown of esteem that fade not away. Now let's look at where they will say, see, this is David. Let's look at Ezekiel 34 before we come back to Psalms 132. Because they'll use Psalm 78 to say, see, he's a shepherd. And then by reason, but because he was a shepherd of literal sheep, this is why they're trying to fit him into this. Ezekiel, what, 34 and where are we at on that? Verse 23. This is what it says. And I will set up one shepherd over them, and he shall feed them. Even my servant David, he shall feed them, and he shall be their shepherd. And I, Yahuwah, will be their Elohim, and my servant David a prince among them. I, Yahuwah, have spoken it. And I will make with them a covenant of shalom, and will cause the evil beast to cease out of the land, and they shall dwell safely in the wilderness and sleep in the woods. And I will make them and the places round about my hill a blessing, and I will cause the shower to come down in the season, and there shall be showers of blessing. And the tree of the field shall yield her fruit, and the earth shall yield her increase, and they shall be safe in their land, and shall know that I am Yahuwah when I have broken the bands of their yoke, and delivered them out of the hand of those that serve themselves of them. And they shall no more be a prey to the heathen, neither shall the beasts of the land devour them, but they shall dwell safely, and none shall make them afraid. And I will raise up for them a plant of renown, and they shall be no more consumed with hunger in the land, neither bear the shame of the heathen any more. Thus shall they know that I am Yahuwah their Elohim, am with them, and that they, even the house of Yasharal, are my people, saith Yahuwah Elohim. Now notice the thing that he said, that there would be a tree of the field, and she would yield her fruit. It also says that this is what he would call showers of blessings to come down. That shower of blessing in its season is the Ruach HaKodesh. But that's another matter for another time. This tree that's yielding her fruit, that you would not be hungry. We talked about this tree the other day. And the week before, when we were talking about that man who was standing by the banks of the river clothed in linen. That's the tree of life that's yielding a fruit, and the people would never hunger. Why would the people never hunger? Because the people will have everlasting life if you partake of this tree. Also remembering what the master told you, that if you eat this flesh, you will never hunger or never thirst, because he told you, he that hunger and thirst after righteousness shall be filled. If you hunger and thirst after righteousness, you will never hunger in the land. You'll be filled with Yahuwah. You'll be filled with his Ruach, and you'll be filled with the things that come from the tree of life. Hello?
Yes, damn.
What's going on? So, with that being said, this is what they use when they say, see, David is the prince. He's the ruler. He's the shepherd. It says it right here. Let's look at 2 Samuel 12. I need to go ahead and do that before we depart. Though Psalms 132 going to back it up, but you know we need two witnesses, and we'll come right back to Psalm 132. Because we have to look who he promised this to. Did he promise it to David, or did he promise it to his seed? Because 1 Kings 11 and 36 said he'd leave a light in Jerusalem always for his servant David's sake. Not for David, but for David's sake. Because we have to follow their logic. They mock us and say we believe a man died and rose again and went into Shamahim for our sake. And they believe a man is going to die, resurrect, go back in the sky, and come back down. That's what they believe. They tell us we believe in zombies, but yet you believe the same thing, just with a different man. You believe the same thing. 2 Samuel, what it is? I'm in 1 Samuel. It kind of helped me to get in 2 Samuel so we could continue. 2 Samuel 12. It says, and when thy days be fulfilled, thou shalt sleep with thy fathers, and I will set up thy seed after thee, which will proceed out of thy bowels, and I will establish his kingdom. He shall build a house for my name, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever. He said out of his bowels. Not David would set up the kingdom, out of his bowels. He never promised David that he would be a shepherd. He never promised David that he would be the ruler. He never promised David any of these things. Matter of fact, David's statement was, all the things that you have spoken, let it be done as you have spoken it. He never promised David any of this. So when you see David, you're supposed to have enough common sense, as your ancestors did during the time of Mashiach, that it was referring to somebody from his progeny, from his lineage, period, from his bloodline. That is common sense. They see David and lose their mind. See, it's David. See, you dumb. You're just dumb. And you know what I'm saying? And because we don't be knowing the book like that. See, I got a thing you want the next time you talk to somebody who like that. In Jeremiah 31, it said he'll make a new covenant according to the covenant that he made with the house of Yasharal in the day that you came up out of the wilderness. Does anybody know what has to be done according to the law? No New Testament. According to the law, what has to be done to make a covenant of effect? If you know the law, you should know exactly where it is, and you should be able to bring it. Should come to your mind immediately that somebody should be able to answer that question. And you should know where it's at in the law for you to prove that. Huh?
Are you talking about the blood?
The blood. Does anybody know where that's at in the law? Where the covenant was sanctified with blood or sealed with blood?
I don't know the chapter, but I mean, I know they were all gathered and they had blood put on them.
That is correct. That's what it says. That is correct. Does anybody know where it's at though? That is in Exodus the 24th chapter. What makes it? If we looking at that, Jeremiah 31 says, according that I will make a new covenant with you, not according to the covenant that I made with your fathers. Then we know according to the law, a covenant has to be sanctified or brought into effect with blood. So if he said he made a covenant not according to the covenant that he made with your fathers, when did David seal this covenant? When was this covenant ever sealed? Period. Because he said he has to make a new one. Now you have to also follow this key point. In Jeremiah 31, does it not say when he bring in this new covenant that he will forgive your iniquities and your sins and he will remember them no more? Is that attached to that new covenant according to the text? Is that not what it says? So if that's what it says, can we make a reasonable assertion that if no new covenant is in effect, that we are still in our sins? And if that be the case, them saying rendering the calves of your lips would be null and void because you're still under a covenant that has been broken. Therefore, your sins have not been forgiven. If we believe what Jeremiah 31 says. And if we know the law that a covenant must be brought in effect with blood. So if there's no blood been shed, then there's no covenant that's been made, which means we are all yet but dead men and can never return back to the land according to this man's own word. Because he said he would make a covenant not like the one with your forefathers. So you can't even be looking for a covenant that's one like your forefathers. David was under the covenant of your forefathers and died under it. And died under it. So what teaching priest was he to build a sure house? Because this man said David was a priest because he wore an ephod. That made him a priest. An ephod is just a garment. They don't believe in the son. So you can't even mention him. They don't believe in him. So, and then the baby that died, he didn't shed his blood, he just died. So then we'll look at, then he said, well, David's a priest because he made offerings. He made an altar. Did not Jacob make an altar? Did not Abraham make an altar? Did not Noah make an altar? Does that make them priests? That doesn't make them a priest because you made an altar. Was that altar in the temple or did they just make one? You know, you couldn't even wear the ephod that the priest was supposed to wear outside of the temple. If you know the law, you're supposed to know that. You can't even, they were supposed to take that off. When they finished their priestly duties, they had to take that off. They just couldn't be walking around amongst the people with that on. So just because it said he had it on a linen ephod does not mean he had on a priestly garment when he had that on. You could not walk around outside the temple with that on. That was a sanctified garment strictly for temple usage. This is why more of the readings I got to start shooting more of the law. I gave y'all Numbers 29 and Exodus 22, and we have to go over that. Because when you know the law, and let me find the chapter where that is with that ephod so y'all can know that. Because I want to say it's Exodus chapter 28. When you know the law, can't nobody just shoot you anything and you go for it. You would already be able to know, oh, this nigga don't know what he's talking about. Yes, that would be Exodus chapter 28. and that is pertaining to the priest's garments, and he begins to talk about the ephod and about verse 31. But I would recommend that I know most of y'all have read it before, but I would recommend that you read it again. It's going to tell you about the priest's robe. It's going to tell you about his breastplate. It's going to tell you about all his garments. This man could not walk out of the temple with this on, and only the high priest could wear that. So this was this man's justification that Psalm 110, see David is the priest after the order of Melchizedek. It just said David had on a linen ephod. Just because he had on a linen ephod does not mean he had a priestly garment. The ephod ain't nothing but a garment or a robe. Anybody could have had an ephod, but did he have an ephod that was sanctified for worship or sanctified for temple usage? Absolutely not. So you have to beware of men that just say certain things and you're like, well, shoot, oh, you like, shoot, he had an ephod, he had to be a priest, he had an ephod on. So what, nigga? If you know the law, you know he can't wear that outside of the house. You can't wear that outside of the house. This man told them to take that off when they were finished and put back on your regular clothes. What was I? Second Samuel, back to Psalms 132, because I got to get ready to let y'all depart. It's 8:41. Some of this stuff I have to continue on Friday, I suppose. Psalms 132 and 7. We will go into his tabernacles, we will worship at his footstool. Arise, O Yahuwah, into thy rest, thou in the ark of thy strength. Let thy priests be clothed with righteousness, and let thy Kadeshim shout for joy. For thy servant David's sake, turn not away the face of thy anointed. Yahuwah has sworn in truth unto David. He will not turn from it. Of the fruit of thy body will I set upon my throne. So it's got to be somebody that's from his lineage who will sit on his throne, not David himself. So David can't be this prince in Micah 5, and he can't be this prince in Ezekiel 34. That's the same thing the gentleman tried to say to me. See, he's the prince and the shepherd in Ezekiel 37. He's the prince in Ezekiel 44. Well, if he the prince, then he going inside the inner tabernacle. And if this is according to the covenant which he made with our forefathers, then David can't go in there because he's not a Levite. This is why knowing the law is very imperative, because then you would know this don't go up against the law, because you under that same covenant. That means the same rules apply. So you mean to tell me y'all just switch stuff up as he pleases without doing the necessary things to bring forth these ramifications and changes? That doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. This is why Isaiah 34 and 16. Now we know this will bring us back to finishing that stuff we started with the priesthood anyway, before unleavened bread came in and we had a little detour. So we need to finish our genealogies and we need to finish this stuff with the priesthood, and this allows us to swing and at least hit the priesthood genealogy. Isaiah 34 and 16. Seek ye out the book of Yahuwah and read, and none of these shall fail, none shall want or mate, for my mouth it have commanded, and its ruach it have gathered them. You know, in John chapter 7, it said the people that know not the law are cursed, they're damned. When you don't know the law, you can be deceived very, very easily. And people can make many, many claims and try to fix. See, a lot of people say Yahushua is not a priest. He's not this, he's not this, he's not that. He fulfills everything in the law. Now, we know this man fed the people the word and fed the people with his flesh. We know he was a teaching priest from reading Micah 4 and reading Matthew 9, that he went about all the coasts of Yasharal teaching the people. Teaching the people about himself, teaching the people the laws and the statutes and commandments of their Elohim. David did not do this. We cannot read that. Never did we read where David was forsaken, like he forsook the place of rest, like he forsook Yahusha. We don't read where David was taken captive, and that his esteem was given into the hands of the enemy. We don't read that for David, but we could see that happening to Yahusha and others who were pointing to him. So Most High willing, continuing on, we'll go into more things pertaining to this Levitical priesthood, because it's a long one. I don't have the time to do it tonight, because we'd have to show the difference between the priesthood of Melchizedek and the priesthood of the high priesthood of Aaron. Because this man said that the priesthood of Aaron and the priesthood of Melchizedek were going on simultaneously. while you were still under the covenant that was according to the covenant. We'll end with this Jeremiah 31, because that's what we really gonna focus on, most high willing. Because y'all need to know the difference between these two covenants. And after we read Jeremiah 31, because I done dealt with it before, we're going to deal with it different. Jeremiah 31 and 31 in 2 Corinthians chapter 3. Jeremiah 31 and 31. Behold, the days come, saith Yahuwah, that I'll make a new covenant with the house of Yasharal and with the house of Yehuda, not according to the covenant that I made with the fathers in the day that I took them by the hand to bring them out of the land of Mizraim, which my covenant they break, although I was a husband unto them. So that means, most high willing, on the Shabbat, for us to be able to understand that, we're going to have to isolate and identify everything that was a part of that first covenant, so we can know everything that was in that covenant, which means we probably going to have to spend, we're going to have to spend a lot of time in the law to be able to do that. So you can know, because I know y'all know certain points of the first covenant, but most high willing, we're going to isolate and identify all the points in that covenant. But this shall be the covenant that I will make with the house of Yasharal after those days, saith Yahuwah. I will put my Torah in their inward parts and write it in their hearts, and I will be their Elohim, and they shall be my people. And they shall teach no more their every man his neighbor and every man his brother, saying, Know Yahuwah. For they shall all know me, from the least of them unto the greatest of them, saith Yahuwah. For I will forgive their iniquity, and I will remember their sin no more. So the key thing we have to sit back and look at is that if we're still under this covenant, then our sins have not been forgiven. That's going to be impossible, because he said he had to make a new one in order for this to happen. And they're going to have to isolate and show up, when was this new one brought into effect? Who brought it into effect? How was it brought into effect? Where can I read that? Where can I read that? This man said David was a priest of Melchizedek, because Melchizedek means king of righteousness. I say, well, then we could say Hezekiah was a priest then, after the order of Melchizedek. We could say Josiah was one. We could say Asa was one. He said, yeah, then you're a clear idiot then. You're a clear idiot. Because none of these men were priests. Melchizedek was a king and priest on his throne. None of those men taught any law. Neither did David. The priests teach the law. 2 Chronicles 33 say the Levites which teach the good law of Yahuwah. David didn't teach nobody no law, which would cancel him for being a prophet like unto Moses, because Moses was a lawgiver. 2 Corinthians chapter 3. I want to say about 3 and 11. Make it about 3 and 6, 3 and 8. Three and 7. But if the ministration of death written and graven in stones was esteemed, so that the children of Yasharah could not steadfastly behold the face of Moses for the esteem of his countenance, which esteem was to be done away, how shall not the ministration of the Ruach be rather esteemed? For if the ministration of condemnation be esteemed, much more doth the ministration of righteousness exceed in esteem. Hold on. For even that which was made esteemed had no esteem in this respect, by reason of the esteem that excelled. For that of which is done away was esteemed, much more that which remain is esteemed. So hallelujah for Yahushua. All we basically saying, if the first covenant was great, then the second covenant's got to be greater, and we have to establish when the second one was brought into effect to make the first one null and void, or therefore we are truly but dead men.